Well, we had an exciting day of chess today, and this one I completely did not expect, with Caruana being 5 out of 5. Kind of unexpectedly. I mean, a phenomenal player, but no one expects to be 5 out of 5 in this position of the tournament. So, at this U.S. Masters, it was Nicholas Theodorou versus Fabiano Caruana, 26-12 versus 28-12. And here I wrote that Giannis Antetokounmpo had 42 points, 12 rebounds, and 11 assists today. But the real story of the day is the Greek freak of chess, Nicholas Theodorou, the former strongest IM in the world, defeated the world number 2, Fabiano Caruana. 26-12 beats 28-12. Pretty stunning, amazing result. Let's jump right into it. I think you'll be surprised by what happened. You probably did not see this game because most people were following the World Championship, and I didn't intend to do any videos on the U.S. Masters, but this was a masterful performance. All right, so we start off with c4. Getting English going here. Knight c3, e5, knight f3, knight c6, a3, and here the standard d5. C takes d5, queen takes d5, queen c2. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, isn't white playing a reverse time on-off here? Yeah, white's playing a reverse time on-off and trying to make an argument that, we can turn this into some type of compelling advantage by using the extra tempo. It's really very similar to what we've seen in this World Championship match and also in the previous two. So this is just very, very standard, really high-level 2800 preparation. And, one of the sneaky threats here, there's a really sneaky threat here with queen c2. One threat is to go take, queen e4 with a double attack against the 2 loose knights. So that's a really interesting try. So now there are multiple things that can be done here, but that's why Theodorou just goes knight takes c3. So knight takes c3 is played here. And now there are 2 ways to recapture. I think the standard way, if you're thinking about it from the perspective of a time on-off, really the standard way is just to go d takes c3. And I actually played an IM who was one of the best players in the world, who played basically a version of a Khan time on-off hybrid where he would do this and then he would try to play e4 or e5 with reverse colors. So let's say I go a5, e4, bishop c5, bishop c4, queen f6, and here I can just go bishop g4. So this is completely equal. But anyway, so Caruana goes for b takes c3, more dynamic of an option. Now, typically what I would tell you is that if this was a time on-off, what you'd be thinking about doing, like after b takes c6, if colors were reversed, we'd be looking at a plan like playing this and going d4 and playing bishop to d3 and playing that type of a setup. Of course, I'm looking at this from the black side because black won the game, and I want to show you it from his perspective. So Greek Freak goes bishop to d6, and now g3 was played. And I do have to say, as someone who played this line, really both sides of the time on-off, and also both sides of this English, to be honest, this is a bit of an uncommon move. This is normally not what you would want to do. You would normally just go for e3. I said e3 is the best move. This once again makes use of typical Sicilian play with reverse colors. And so I just want to go d4. I would just like to go d4, bishop to b2, bishop to e2. Now I'm going to play safely here to avoid any possibilities of a fork with e4. But yeah, let's say I just play like this, and then I go rook a e1. This seems like a completely risk-free way to play with white, and then I can just play a4. So looks like an overall very solid position. But you'll see that in going g3, the hard part in playing g3 is that you have to be very sensitive that black is not able to effectively get some e4 shot in now with preparation, obviously. So castles, bishop to g2. Now, 2 main moves come to mind for me. One is rook e8, trying to push e4, and the other is queen e7. So let's say rook e8, I play d3, I'm stopping that. Bishop f5, knight d2. This is a very typical move that you often have to play in this line to stop that e4 shot. So let's say queen d7, rook a b8, just kind of for safety and also for the knight a5 idea. So now I go knight a5, take, bishop e6. I would say black is slightly for choice here. I mean, it is really hard with white to figure out exactly what you might try to do here because you have no real targets to attack and it's not super obvious what your pawn break is going to be. So queen to e7, played by the Greek Freak, very skilled player, very talented player. d3, just like I was saying, you have to play prophylactically. You know, that's exactly why the first question we always ask ourselves is, what is the opponent's idea? If they have in the obvious case, like let's say they're threatening mate in 1, we either have to mate them or react to their threat. But if they have a serious positional threat at high level, if you're not doing something equally as important or more important, you have to react to it. So bishop g4 was played, which was a very interesting move. By the way, a highly provocative move. I would say similar to the 95 move played by Gukesh yesterday trying to provoke f4. So you'll see the very subtle point of this, and I don't even think for sure that Caruana quite grasped how deep this move was. You know, I was thinking of just b6, bishop to b7, knight a5. Yeah, this is a standard way to play. And typically black would be a little bit better here just due to the extra space in the center. You know, you look at e5 versus d3 there. You know, I would normally say that black has greater central presence, just slightly more control in the center there, even though black does not have a central majority. So that's what I would have been leaning towards there. I think that's overall the strongest plan. So bishop g4, and he played h3. Now, I'll admit, when I first played through this, I was kind of like, is he going to take on f3? What's his follow-up going to be? And he goes back to d7, and I thought, oh, that is deep. Because now he has ideas like f5, f4, and now we've kind of softened these pawns up a little bit. And even at first glance, it's not super obvious that you've made it that much weaker. But, you know, if you can go f5, f4, and then take, and then go e4, that actually does soften things up a lot. So this was very similar to the provocative move played in the World Championship game yesterday. So I was just thinking this, rook ad8, knight a5 again. Let's say knight a5, rook e1, rook fe8. And here I go queen e6, and now I have ideas. I have ideas like this. I'm also kind of controlling the light squares on the queen side here. So I think that would have been the best try for white, just keeping the position equal. All right, so h3, bishop d7, very clever move. Castles b6. Yep, very precise prophylactic move by the Greek Freak here. e4, and now he played f6. I didn't like f6 just because it was not as forcing as just directly going knight a5. Because one of the points behind knight a5 is like, okay, let's say I play this. Now I go queen e6, and now I go rook fe8. Now I have the bishop f8 move. One of my students calls this the Kislik tuck, where you tuck in a piece, you tuck in a bishop specifically, typically to its home square, after the other pieces have been brought in so that it doesn't mess with the coordination of the other pieces. I used to love to see games where Michael Adams would go queenside castles, king b1, bishop c1, click, tuck it in. But, all right, so here, let's say I take on d6. And now I go queen c6. That is a nice move. I have ideas like this. You know, I'm watching the pawn. So let's say here, queen a4. And then I go knight c4. You can see the square's a little bit weak here. Pretty fair to say equal plus here. So definitely some weaknesses here on the queen side. Pretty safe to say that the bishop pair is very seriously restricted and restrained. So knight a5 would have been a stronger positional try. The problem with f6 is it was just a little bit slow. All right, so now there's always this tough question in this kind of structure. Do I go for d4 for the pawn break, or do I go for knight h4? I think knight h4 was better, although I am proposing a hybrid of the two plans. So knight h4, provoke this move, and then go d4. That's what I thought was the most clever idea. And, you know, notice there is some play on this diagonal. I go knight a5, knight f5, h4, and rook fd8. And I said black has a very slight initiative here, but I think this was the right thing to try to go for here. As you can see, of course, we have this X-ray on this diagonal. It makes it a little bit harder to take on F5. All right, so D4 played by Caruana. And yeah, I think the simplest plan, I've played this structure a couple times before with black. I think the simplest plan is just to try to grip all these squares. To just go here and queen F7. Simple, strong move. We're gripping all the squares. I have knight to C4 next move. Pretty hard to argue that black is not better here. So black has an excellent position here. Also notice that we do have this kind of dormant queenside majority. It can advance later. You know, a typical move like A5 in the near future tends to be a good move in almost any variation. All right, so he goes queen F7. And by the way, his moves weren't bad. They just weren't the most concrete. They weren't the most precise move. So I thought F6, queen F7 was a little bit slow, but you'll see. It was more play, just like Gukesh in Game 4. Very similar, super provocative, while maybe not doing that much himself. Bishop E3, good move by Caruana. Yeah, I once again just thought, okay, this is the simple common sense move. You go bishop to E6. And, you know, we're just controlling these squares very well. Let's say knight B3. Take, take. I go bishop C4. Yeah, I mean, I do have pretty good pieces, but the argument here for white would be, well, I'm just so solid. I have no major weaknesses myself. The isolated A-pawn is not even weak. So, you know, with an isolated A-pawn like that, a lot of the time it leads to open lines, and there's nothing really that attackable. So, all right, king H8. Yeah, that was a pretty good move. Like I said, I preferred knight A5 because I'm gonna want to try to use these squares no matter what. But anyway, he plays that A4. Okay, best move by Caruana. Now, the biggest problem for Caruana is what do I do in this position? Because do you know what position type this is? It's not a closed position because they've traded off one pair of pawns. It's a semi-closed position. And so he'd like to try to find a target to attack, but because of Theodoru's excellent B6 move, he doesn't have a target on the queen side. And so without a pawn break and without a target, it gets harder to play from the white side. And so he may be looking for things like, let's say, you know, modest piece improvement, and also things like some piece exchanges. But another consideration is just, you know, maybe I'll just go knight d2 and just push f4 really quickly. I mean, f4 is probably not going to be a bad move at all, especially, you know, the problem being if they ever took here, that would be a pretty serious central majority. So black also has to be a little bit cautious. All right, rook a d8, standard move, improving the worst place piece. Yeah, white played rook fe1. Again, from white's point of view, I think knight d2 should have been played. Just like black should have played knight a5 earlier, white should have played knight d2 more quickly. All right, so rook fe1, here comes knight a5, excellent move. Here comes knight d2 by Caruana, exactly as predicted. Major fight on the light squares. Now we get a very, very nice move by black here, very provocative. Queen h5, excellent move. And Caruana, unfortunately, was goaded into playing a dubious move that weakened his pawn structure. I said black goes for provocation once again, like Gukesh aimed for yesterday in the World Championship. So I think the simplest move is just avoid any weakness. King h2. Yeah, it's, you know, might not look that exciting, but it's solid. Let's say bishop a6. All right, I can just go back. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to play in Karpovian style and just kind of switch back and say, all right, well, I'm just really solid. And I think this was the right way to play for Caruana, and it would have asked an excellent question to Theodoru. What exactly are you going to try to do here? Now, I think if Caruana had been thinking about playing for a draw, he probably would have played something like this. And I've lost many games in the same kind of fashion, where you're playing someone 200 points lower rated. So 28-12, phenomenal rating, 19 points away from Carlsen. He's getting hungry. He's thinking, hey, I can crawl up on Carlsen. You know, maybe I'll get to 28-35, you know, early in 2025. So he's got a real chance to climb. And, you know, just playing some safe, solid moves wasn't really in the cards for him. So I had a chapter on overpressing in Chess Logic and Practice, that black book right behind me. Good chapter to look at. I show an example of Magnus Carlsen overpressing. You know, when you see it in context from the best players, I totally understand why they do it, because I've done it too. So I have games in there where I made mistakes. So I think it's very important to point out the typical mistakes you make and what you've learned from them. All right, so Queen f7, good and pretty good move. I think this was better, though. I'll show you why this was better. Rook f1, h5, f3, and now I can go queen h7, and now I have ideas like, for example, ideas like going g5, king g7, switching over to the h-file and getting a bit of an attack down there. So I think that was a more dangerous plan, but he's still better. He didn't throw away his edge. But it didn't feel like Caruana was in this sort of mood to just sort of try to grovel for a draw, which I would have tried to do. And I've done successfully many times against grandmasters. I should do some videos on some of those stubborn defenses, like improving your stubborn defense. So bishop e6, d5, c4. I think this was absolutely the right way for white to play. Just super calm. And, you know, what black is going to do is black's going to play c6. Black's going to go knight b7, use the c5 square. Very calm, very modest. But you know what? White does not have many weaknesses, and that's one of the main things going for him here. And like I said, the pawn on the A file, you know, is almost always going to be off limits. So for this reason, black is very slightly better, but really hard to actually turn that into a more decisive type of advantage. All right, so queen a2 played by Caruana here, and now Theodoru plays bishop to e6. I just would have played queen e7. That looked a bit better to me. Yeah, let's say I go here, and then I go here. Now I can just play the h5 move, next move. You know, I have some ideas of swinging over a heavy piece to the h-file, kind of like before. All right, so bishop e6, d5, played by Caruana. Bishop d7. Now here, I believe he did make an inaccuracy, which turned out to be somewhat important. I think he should have just played the solid plan. Now, once again, this could have been connected to overpressing because, unfortunately, this is one of those cases. Remember what I said yesterday in the video on the previous World Championship match game? Sometimes you can just say, hey, you know what? I didn't get what I wanted with white. Let me try to bail out. Let me try to be rock solid. So f3, queen c2, bishop f1. I have a really cool move coming up soon. c6, same plan as before. I go knight b7. You know, the knight on the rim is not dim because it can come in. So that's what you need to understand about the knight on the rim and potentially being dim. I remember there was this lecture and someone said, "Hey, well, what's up with the knight on the rim being dim when we see all these Petrosian games where he plays knight a3 and knight h3?" And then, you know, this grandmaster goes, "Oh, well, you know, those are exceptions." And he goes, but he did it so many times, like in the Dutch and stuff. And so that's one of the reasons why I suggest thinking about it in a more nuanced way and say, look, if you have a knight on the rim that's corralled and can't go anywhere or can't come in anywhere, doesn't have any squares at all, it all comes down to utility. If it has no utility, yeah, it's a bad piece. But if it has excellent utility, it might be doing excellent things. Also, it could just be on a transit square. A lot of people have never heard that expression before, transit square. You know, it's one of those things where if you look up kind of like advanced glossary of chess terms, sometimes that's not even in there. But, you know, of course, everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about with that. But yeah, so the knight's not bad on a5 at all. Also, notice what it does. It blocks a pawn break. So it's prophylactic and purposeful, and it has a square to come into on c5. So here's a cool line here. Knight b3. Here, I'm having some fun with this. Take f5. Bit of a wild shot. And after this, boom, I have g6. And here we have a lot of potential fun here. Notice that there are a number of things that are loose. So I looked at just f6 and then queen takes f6 and said that black is slightly better here. So that f5 break, that's we are having a lot of fun here. Greek Freak making the position as freaky as possible here in this line. But nevertheless, I think that if this had been played by Caruana, he shores up the position. He goes bishop g2. Hold on tight. You must hold on tight. And, you know, no one really likes to teach this because they consider it boring. But if I did a video showing, I don't know, 20 draws I had against grandmasters, which were all based on just kind of solid passive defense, when they had no clear path into my position and I put the burden of proof on them, what would happen is that international masters would see the video and go, ooh, yeah, that's good defensive play. And a lot of people would see it and go, oh, that looks kind of boring. Like, I don't really understand what happened. It looks kind of boring. But again, so much comes down to what can the opponent concretely do. And I think if Caruana had just held on tight a bit more, he could have been able to hold this. Now, you're going to see some nasty play here from the Greek Freak. All right. Take, h5. There we go, getting the pawn break in. Queen e2. That's a good move. That's a good defensive move by Caruana. g6. Now, one of the things about g6 is now he's opening up all kinds of possibilities for the f5 break, or take an f5, blast everything open, switch everything to the king side, rook g8, double up on the g file. He could be in big trouble. Now, I think Caruana made the correct decision here. He goes g takes h5, g takes h5. So what's he going to do on the g file? Contest. He's just going to contest there. And once again, what should the defensive plan be over here? Be as solid as possible. Now, the Greek Freak might load up the Alekhines gun here. So while he's loading up, queen h7, rook g6, rook fg8. While he's loading up his gun, black can do some useful things, or white can do some useful things here and go a4, c4. A4, a5. Maybe I take on b6, simplify the position a little. So queen h7, and here I was saying, play the break. You must play the break right away. Now he loads up the gun here, rook g6, c4. Now I take. And I'm just being solid here. I'm just being really solid. By the way, similar move to what you'll see in the game. Fun move. They can't take because of the x-ray right there. As I like to say with one of my students, radiology. He's making use of his radiology skills, his radiology degree. All right, so rook af1, bit of a passive move. Rook g4. Beautiful move. Gorgeous move by the Greek Freak. You do not often see a 26-12 player throw a move like that into the camp of the number 2 player in the world, rated 28-12. You almost never see something like that. Now, what was the correct defensive plan? I was saying just king h2. Once again, hold on tight. Hold on tight. Make it as hard as possible for the opponent. And, now he has to watch out for us taking the piece and trying to run away. King g3, and I go rook h1. So here I go a5. We need our break. Take, bishop c1. I go c4 after that. Again, got my break in. So what am I trying to achieve here? I'm trying to get some exchanges, and I'm trying to get breaks in. So trade off pawns, get pawn breaks, and trade off rooks here. So takes. Here I play rook g3. Interesting move because that pawn is relatively weak. Now I don't totally get out of the woods here with this. Take c3, and there's that f5 move. That is a key move for activity for black. Take. Now the c pawn is pretty good for black here, so that's why I say minus over plus here. It's about a -1 advantage for black here. Equal material, but nevertheless, I think excellent chances for Caruana to save the game. Once again, stubborn defense, putting the burden of proof on the opponent. Ugh, ugly move, as Jeremy Silman liked to say. We got some Swiss cheese going on here. So, Caruana was certainly not able to eat it. So this was bad. I said f4 was the best move. Now the problem here is take, and then queen takes e4. And okay, take, and queen h7. Take. Well, the problem here being, look, they're just too many weak pawns here. So I'm going to be 2 pawns up. Take. Now he goes for the corridor mate threat with king g1, but rook g3. Take. Check. King g8. And I said minus plus, black wins. So 2 pawns up. Yes, opposite colored bishops, but they don't really help us out here. So it's the 2 pawns. I mean, it is a pass pawn on g3. So h4 played by Caruana. Yeah, not so nice. King h2. Another move that could be played here, which is a pretty nasty possibility. There's also the possibility of going in for something like a queen e7 type of move, kind of eyeing that pawn, maybe a push f5 somewhere. He went bishop c5 right away. I thought that looked excellent also. Yeah, I was surprised that was the engine's top choice. That was a very nice move, yeah. Doubled and isolated pawns, but we got rid of their best defender, left them with a really bad bishop. And here the Greek Freak loads up the gun here. Got Alekine's gun set up here. It's a scary thing. You don't want to have that pointed at you. It's very dangerous. Some would say it should be illegal. It's too powerful on a file like this. So Queen H6 was maybe a little bit of a faster way to win. Check, check, F5, nasty little pawn break there. Check, check. Yeah, yeah. Basically queen and pawn versus the two rooks here. But yeah, white is just totally paralyzed here and going to lose more material. So queen G6. Now the last chance here is to try to simplify. Try to get something involving rook b8. So let's say bishop takes, rook b8. But even if you do that, yeah, it's still losing, of course. Still losing, of course. I can even play a5 here. So yeah, it's unfortunately still losing here for white. So a5 was played, and now there was a very uncharacteristic blunder, almost making you think, oh, did they input the moves wrong or something? Once again, I like queen h6. I'm just going to scoop up that pawn over there on h4. There's my f5 break again. Gobble, gobble. You know, gobble, gobble, just in time, you know, just after Thanksgiving. So that queen's doing a lot of gobbling and the game's over. But f5 was played, and this, I mean, what's so crazy about this, which is even hard to believe, that piece is hanging. So he actually could have played bishop h3 right here. This was completely overlooked, which is, you know, in my mind, just unbelievable that Caruana played such a bad game here. But there's bishop h3 because he pinned himself. He pinned himself here for no reason. So my line here, take, queen f6. I simply take, I go queen g3. Now I have f4. Boom. Bit of a nasty move too. Take. Now I have e5 ideas, or taking the pawn, whichever one. So he takes and I go e5. Now it's possible that black, you know, I don't know, saw something like this and thought it might be playable, but no, this is not playable. Queen takes c7. This is losing. This is losing for black. This is losing for black. So check, and bishop to f3. This is losing for black. Yeah, these connected pass pawns are absolute monsters. So unbelievable double blunder here in this 28-12 versus 26-12 game. Yeah, I never intended to make this video, and I was assuming that if Theodoru won the game, it was going to be, you know, maybe due to some type of tactic or time trouble, like unexpected blunder. Now, you know, you could make that argument here that it was a double blunder in time trouble, but not really what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting bishop h3 to be here, just due to that undefended piece. Queen takes f5, and now it's over. Queen f4 check. Gobble, gobble with the queen. Gobble, gobble. Yeah, I'm just going queen f2. h4 check. Yep. By the way, you can't take it. If you take, I go check, king h5, and bishop e8 is a checkmate. So I go here, and this is trapped. So that's the ball game here. Yeah, you feel bad for Caruana in a game like this because, like I said, you know exactly what he was doing. He was overpressing here, and you see what the consequence of that was. So, you know, you feel a bit bad for him. Yeah, bishop f5, nice move. Check, king h7. Yeah, there's just nothing to do here. This is losing. Yeah, even if you try to pull the bishop back, it's like I can go check, and then I go check, and then I go bishop e4, and it's overall the same. So, rook f8, take. If king takes, I can just do this, gobble up the rook. LPDO, loose pieces drop off. Rook takes, queen c1 check, and the Italian prince resigns against the Greek freak. Pretty amazing game, played in Charlotte, North Carolina. You know, as they say, North Carolina, come on and raise up. And the Greek freak definitely raised up in North Carolina today. Wow. That was a crazy game. The former strongest IM in the world, now, of course, a dangerous GM, just picked up a whole bunch of rating points. You got to feel a little bad for Caruana because when you see that 5 out of 5, you go, ooh, is he going to go 9 out of 9? Is he going to go crazy and have the best tournament performance in chess history? Unfortunately, something freaky happened. He ran into the Greek freak. So those things happen, and there was a phenomenal performance by the Greek freak in chess today, and also in basketball today. 42 points. That's crazy. Potential MVP. But, many of us chess fans were hoping for Caruana to be the MVP in the chess world. But we'll see. We'll see. Can he catch Carlsen? We will have to see very soon. Anyway, check out my chess culture page on Facebook, and I'll catch you guys later.